Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO, a very busy day. We go to the phones, Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Chad. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's a busy one. It's a busy Wednesday, or it's not even Wednesday, Tuesday morning. I guess we'll start off the Democrats today announcing 2 articles of impeachment. Matt, what is your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, they did their press conference, took no questions, which is something you do when you're not confident about what you've announced. They clearly don't want to answer why these are the only 2, why they're not putting one forward on bribery, which both the Speaker and House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff have said the President is guilty of. And it's still not 100% clear that, where the votes are. I mean, I do think it's highly likely to pass the House, but remember when the inquiry vote was taken on the House floor, you had 2 Democrats vote against it, Colin Peterson of Minnesota and Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, both sort of moderate Democrats in tough districts. You could see a larger number ultimately oppose these 2 articles. One was on abuse of power, the other is on obstruction of Congress. Abuse of power was an article that failed when Andrew Jackson was impeached. And obstruction of Congress, I thought Jonathan Turley, the law professor at George Washington University who testified in front of Congress, I thought he made a really good point. I mean, you can't make executive privilege challenges impeachable conduct. I mean, they happen in every administration over and over and over again. I mean, the Obama administration fought the Congress on executive privilege, on Fast and Furious with executive privilege claims. And those claims are being worked out, through the courts. And ultimately, the courts will decide, and then that'll decide it. So, I think both of these are weak impeachment articles. I think they will pass the House. I don't think you'll have. I'm highly confident you won't have any Republicans vote for them. And the question is how many Democrats are going to oppose them. And so, yeah, look, I think that the impeachment case has started off fairly weak, and it's weakened over time. Public opinion is not moving in their direction. If anything, it's moving in the president's direction. And now I think the Democrats are sort of trapped. They feel they have to pursue this and move forward with it because they basically made their bed. They have to lie in it. But politically, I don't think this is working for them.
Is this dangerous for the nation? Because it seems to lower the bar and the threshold for impeachment, whereas it used to. It used to be considered a pretty high bar that you would have to jump over in order to introduce articles of impeachment. And now, Matt, it just from what's been described as the reasoning behind the articles of impeachment, it's almost like this is going to touch off the next time a Democrat president's elected, he does something that we don't necessarily agree with, impeachment. Here we go. Let's go down this road.
Yeah, it's a great point. And impeachment was not intended to be used as a tactic cavalierly. And that's what the House majority, the Democratic majority, is doing here. It's never been used in a partisan way before. I guess the one exception would be when Republicans did it to Clinton in the late 90s. That did not work in their favor. But at that time, you had 30 or 31 Democrats vote to move the inquiry forward on the floor. So there was an interest in learning more. Ultimately, there just wasn't that level of support for the articles themselves, and Clinton was acquitted. But I agree with you. I mean, this is such a weak case. First of all, we've never had a president impeached in their first term. And that raises huge questions about whether this is really about, conduct or whether it has more to do with trying to affect the next election, which I've always believed is the Democrats' goal, particularly since they know they're going to fail in the Senate. So since they're not going to get what they want, I mean, what is their ultimate goal? It has to be to try to weaken Trump for 2020. But you're right. I mean, I also think just lowering the threshold. I mean, look, impeachment ought to be clear, it ought to be overwhelming, and it ought to be bipartisan. And it's none of those things here. It is, you have no crime, you have no victim, you have, Ukrainian officials, both the president and the foreign minister, saying they were never pressured. It's just a head scratcher. Why they're going to DEFCON 6 on a case that's this weak, and particularly when the politics of it don't seem to be working in their favor. Battleground states moving in Trump's direction, independent voters rejecting the case for impeachment. We saw the Wisconsin polling a couple weeks ago that showed 53% opposing impeachment. So I think this is going to get worse before it gets better. And in the meantime, all this other important work is not getting done because the Democrats are focused on this. You had this absolutely ridiculous split screen this morning where Speaker Pelosi held a press conference at 9 a.m. announcing 2 articles of impeachment. Less than an hour later, she announces a deal on the USMCA-Canada trade agreement.
Yes.
I mean, the idea that you can sort of slap your negotiating partner on one side, and then on the other side, offer a hand in friendship is just ridiculous.
Do you think my thinking behind that is that the Democrats know that impeachment's such a losing issue and that they're falling behind in the polls, that they want to do something that's pretty popular across the United States, and that would be the USMCA trade deal. Is that are you thinking along the same lines that this was just set up to maybe help boost the Democrat numbers on off of the impeachment news?
Yeah, she doesn't. Look, she has to give her moderate members something positive. Yeah. And impeachment is not positive. And I don't just mean positive in the sense that it's negative action. I mean that it's positive for them to take back home as their last vote of the year.
Right.
They're going to have 3 or 4 weeks vacation. And so, yes, U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement is very popular. It's going to be very good for the economy. I think independent analysts have said it will add 500,000 jobs, significantly boost, not just hiring but economic output, GDP, increased trade between all 3 countries. I mean, it's very, very, very positive. It appears they're going to vote on impeachment maybe this coming Monday, and then they'll vote on U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement a day or 2 later, perhaps on December 18th. So her moderate members have been pressuring her to do this. Look, this negotiation, I'm not talking about the U.S.-Mexico-Canada negotiation. I'm talking about the congressional negotiation has taken more than a year. I mean, the deal was announced between the 3 countries more than a year ago. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that the enforcement provisions would take a year to get negotiated. I mean, they were dragging this out all along, and the reason for that is that I think that Speaker Pelosi wanted to trade USMCA for impeachment with her moderate members. If they walk the line on impeachment, most of them, she's going to then hold up her end of the bargain and deliver the USMCA vote, which they can take back to their districts, which would be good for agriculture, be good for tech. I mean, there's so many different sectors where it'll be good, autos, et cetera. So that's, I think, the politics of this. And either way, look, it's very good for the economy. It's a huge win for Trump. He said he was going to renegotiate NAFTA and get a better deal. He has. There's really no public opposition to the USMCA deal. And in fact, Richard Trumka, the AFL-CIO president, endorsed it this morning. Now the enforcement provisions have been negotiated.
Yeah. I guess one thing we got to get to, the IG report that was released yesterday, Matt. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think John Solomon did a review. I mean, I think it was something like 51 violations. I mean, nine circumstances where the FISA court was given inaccurate or incomplete information. I mean, it's serious. And keep in mind, the IG has limited view. They can't compel testimony or they don't have subpoena power. All they can really do is look back at DOJ and see what's there to look at and conduct interviews for those who are willing to voluntarily cooperate. Look, I thought it was very bad. It's clear. Look, there's a huge question now about whether this whole thing, this so-called crossfire hurricane, was started appropriately or not. And I don't even know that I've made up my mind on that. I mean, the report basically tries to make clear that it was founded appropriately. Now, that's not what Attorney General Bill Barr and the U.S. Attorney John Durham, who's looking at the criminal aspects of all this, believe. And I'll be interested to see what their evidence is and what their conclusions are. But regardless of how it was started, it never should have continued. As long as it did. I mean, there were huge questions about Steele, Christopher Steele, the former MI5 operative who led the opposition dossier effort that was Democrat funded. The FISA warrants never would have been granted had the full information, the exculpatory information been presented. We learned that 4 Americans were being surveilled, not 2 and not 3, which is what we previously thought. So this raises really, really serious questions about how all this happened. Is it the FISA courts grant these applications and these applications for surveillance on like a 99% basis? and it's because they're the only, the government is the only party there. There's no lawyer for the other side, and so the burden should be really high. And in this case, the government did not do what they should have. I hope they're looking at disbarring some of these people who presented incomplete information to the FISA court. So I don't think the story's over. I think the IG report raises more questions than it answers, and now the focus will turn to what U.S. Attorney John Durham finds, and it seems he is moving forward.
Very good. Matt, tell folks about your podcast and also your morning newsletter that goes out.
Yeah, the newsletter is called Must Read Texas. We take all the top news from around the state, put it in one clean, easy-to-read email every weekday morning by 9 a.m. to more than 3,000 Texans. You can subscribe to a one-week free trial or on a monthly basis for $3.50 at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. Most recent episode is with Bill O'Reilly, former number one cable news host for the O'Reilly Factor for Fox News for more than 20 years. He just interviewed President Trump for his podcast and his radio commentary. We talk about that interview, his view on impeachment, whether he might get back into cable news. Fascinating conversation you can find in the iTunes Store, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and on Spotify.
Very good, Matt. As always, appreciate your time. We'll visit with you next week.
Thanks, Chad. Take care.
That's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.